Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. On aTech, we're constantly bringing you exciting and rewarding topics. In this video again, we're going to dive into the history of Germany's hatred of nuclear power. In particular, we'll look at the nuclear power plants and the country's strategy to eliminate carbon from its energy production. In recent years, we'll have witnessed the efforts of every country in its fight against climate change. According to experts, nuclear power is a key element in this effort. This is because of a large production capacity and the possibility of expanding in the efficient and sustainable way. Germany, on the other hand, has decided to turn its back on this powerful method of energy production. Instead, it adapted a strategy that is now proven to be worrying. Are you ready to find out? If so, stay until the end of the video. Germany's hatred of nuclear power is now being felt in global warming. How would you put it? Well, this action, which it says would allow it to reach its zero emissions goal, is now raising a lot of concern for the rest of the world. Experts believe that going nuclear is one of the alternatives that could help us reduce our CO2 emissions. But Germany, despite this, plans to reject it and get out of the nuclear power completely. But why such a decision? In fact, the anti-nuclear movement in Germany is not new. It emerged years ago, especially in the 1970s. A movement which, according to the country, was normal after the disastrous events following the nuclear power plants that followed. Throughout the 20th century, this opposition of this energy source has become viral throughout the country. Many sympathizers joined the cause to oppose nuclear power, especially since during the 1970s, several German power plants were operating without meeting the required safety standards. This, according to the country, put not only the workers on these sites, but also the ordinary citizens at great risk. But this was not the only reason. In 1979, a serious accident occurred in the US. Nuclear power plant at 3 Mile Island. The incident occurred in March 28, 1979. It has been called the worst nuclear incident in history of the United States. But do not be fooled if you think we called that because of the number of deaths or injuries. The incident results of the melting of the reaction core. But there were no deaths or injuries, and radioactive contamination was reduced. In the end, there was no explosion or fire. Most of the radiation was contained. Following this investigation for this major disaster, measures were taken. Planning, management systems, staff training, and emergency procedures were strengthened and improved. On the other hand, there was unforeseen collateral damage in Germany. This incident considerably strengthened the anti-nuclear view in the country. Afterwards, more than 200,000 people dispute this energy source. They saw it as a threat to the community. This event contributed to the foundation of the political group Greens in the country in 1980. In addition, in 1986, another disastrous disaster occurred in a nuclear power plant in Chernobyl. This disaster created fear and aversion into nuclear power throughout the world, but especially in Germany. It takes some time to understand the tragedy that followed the explosion of the reactor No. 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Unfortunately, this catastrophe has caused many deaths, but particularly affected Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. The Scandinavian countries immediately noticed that the air coming from the Soviet continent bore the masks of radioactivity. To this day, it is considered the worst civil nuclear accident in history that occurred in Ukraine. And it turned out that this technology, which was thought to be efficient and sustainable, carried a series of incalculable risks. When Germany's Green Party and Social Democrats won the election in 1998, a major decision was made. The country's nuclear power plants will have a limited lifespan of 32 years, and they will only produce a certain amount of energy before they are shut down. It was also decided that all nuclear power plants in the country will close by 2022. But the story does not end there. In 2019, Chancellor Angela Merkel decided to extend the lifespan of a nuclear power plant by 8 years for the 7 plants that were already shut down and 14 for the other 10 that are still in operation. Unfortunately, this decision was quickly retracted. Indeed, in March 11, 2011, another monstrous disaster had occurred on Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan. On that day, Japan was caught off guard by an earthquake originating in Tokyo in eastern Japan. The earthquake reached a magnitude of 9 on the Richter scale. A tsunami followed. Waves reached a height of more than 10 meters. The earthquake and tsunami caused many deaths and great damage in the northeast of Japan. But this earthquake also caused an incident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. In the first days of the incident, the IAEA set up teams to assess key nuclear safety elements and radioactivity levels. As a result, the German authorities suspended the extension of previously defined closures. They immediately imposed the closure of 8 nuclear power plants. As for the remaining plants, it was decided that their operation would be limited under the enclosure in 2022. A discussion that, according to the rest of the world, would be Germany's worst mistake. But why? In fact, the 3 reactors that the country's plans to close by the end of 2022 were built in the 1980s. Together, they're capable of producing enough energy to power millions of homes. In terms of efficiency, their output per hour would be comprehended of thousands of wind turbines in operation. A quantity of energy that the country will simply throw away by abandoning these power plants. But that's not the point. In fact, by shutting down the nuclear power plants, the Germans thought that they're relying on renewable energy sources combined with coal plants. However, as we know, the wind turbines and photovoltaic panels produce very little energy. To meet the energy demand, Germany would have to rely heavily on coal. This, according to other countries, justifies the increase of CO2 emissions for several years already, but the country is also planning to eliminate coal as an energy source. However, analysts believe that this will not happen anytime soon given the current energy situation. In their view, its next strategy of harnessing hydrogen instead of fossil fuels is not a bad one. On the contrary, it could be a revolutionary move for the cost-effective energy transition. However, this approach is overkill given the cost and difficulty of implementation. The country should therefore think of a backup plan in case everything does not go as planned. The closure of these 3 nuclear power plants would be a big mistake, especially since the representation of the major part of the country's energy production today. The rest of the world is still wondering about one thing. Has Germany taken into account the fact that it could run out of resources in a few years? So many questions remain unanswered for that moment. This decision to abandon could put the country in critical financial difficulty. Above all, it could lead to a massive blackout and even social instability at all levels. Nuclear energy could thus be a key ally for Germany to gradually move away from fossil fuels. Do you think that this hatred of nuclear energy could be renewed for Germany today? Tell us what you think in the comments. This is it, folks. We've just seen why Germany is so afraid of nuclear power. If you like this video, feel free to leave us a little comment and be notified for our next videos. Subscribe to the channel and activate those notifications. And above all, don't forget to give us a little blue thumb. We'd really appreciate it. See you soon for another topic on aTech.